There's a hunger that's easy to explain. Your stomach is empty, it's been a few hours, your body, your brain is asking for food. You eat, you feel better, that makes sense. Then there's another kind. You already ate, but your brain is still searching. You open the fridge without a plan, you close the cupboard and come back 5 minutes later like something new appeared. Sweet, salty, crunchy, something. You're not even sure what you want. And you just know your brain won't go quiet. That's the food noise that everybody talks about. And if you've lived with it, you know how exhausting it is. It's not really appetite, it's mental chatter, negotiating with yourself all day, eating and still feeling unfinished. Maybe that's your exact experience. Maybe food has never been loud for you, and you're here for someone who you love that is on one of the medications, like the GLP medications. Either way, what we're really talking about is how the body decides if it had enough. And for people who do live with the food noise, here's what I want you to hear. It's not proof you're weak. It usually means the appetite system, gut, brain, hormones, blood sugar has been turned up too loud for too long. That's why GLP-1 matters. Not because it's trendy, because it proves something people have tried to explain for years. Appetite is biology. Your hunger, your fullness, your cravings, your ability to eat and stop, that is all biology. It doesn't mean habits don't matter. It means habits are far easier to build when the biology isn't screaming and you understand what's going on. Everyone here has a different body, history, and set of medications, and these drugs go by different names and rules depending on where you live. So take this as education that helps you ask better questions. Here's the first thing people miss. GLP-1 is a hormone your body already makes, mainly in the gut, especially after you eat something. When food comes in, your gut sends messages to your brain. GLP-1 is one of them. Think of it as a calm messenger saying, food arrived, slow down, help us feel full. We don't need to keep searching. It does a few things. First, it helps fullness land. They eat and their brain actually gets the message, so they don't drift back to the kitchen 10 minutes later. Second, it slows down how fast the stomach empties, so meals last longer. Too much of that can cause nausea or bloating, so more isn't better, but in the right amount. Third, it steadies blood sugars, which smooths out the crashes that send you hunting for quick energy. Put those together and the whole system gets less reactive. Hunger isn't as sharp, cravings aren't as urgent. That's why people say, I ate less, but I was okay. And that sentence is huge because old dieting meant white knuckling through hunger. This isn't weakness leaving the body, it's biology changing the signal. Now, the medications simply Ozempic and Wegovy, which are both semaglutide, same ingredient, different approved uses. Ozempic is usually for type 2 diabetes, Wegovy is for weight management, fatty liver, and depending on your insurance coverages, both mainly turn up the GLP-1 signal. Manjaro and Zepbound, which are the same, one's branded for diabetes, are both tirzepatide, which works on two pathways, GLP-1 and GIP, another gut hormone involved in how your body handles nutrients and insulin. That's why some people respond differently to one than the other. But this is not a race to find which drops the weight the fastest. Bodies differ, side effects, cost, access, and medical history all differ. Some people do better on one, some on the other, and some shouldn't be on either, depending on their medical history. And that's a conversation for you and your clinician because the medication isn't the whole plan. The medication creates space, and what you build in that space is everything. It is really dependent on the foundation. I've had many patients on so many different doses. Sometimes they'll say it works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on their habits behind the medication, how they're eating, if they're skipping meals, how their fluid intake is, because that could affect the appetite completely. So if you're on one right now, Hear me out. Do not waste that quiet noise that you feel. When the food noise calms down, that's a teaching window. It's a chance to learn things that were almost impossible when your appetite was screaming. What real fullness feels like. That protein holds you differently than just random snacks. The fluids and the fiber change cravings. That eating too fast makes fullness harder to hear. So if you're on a medication right now for weight loss, hear me out. Do not waste that quiet feeling that you all of a sudden got from the lack of food noise. When the food noise calms down, that's a teaching window, a chance to learn things that were almost impossible when your appetite was always screaming. You learn what fullness feels like, that you don't have to finish the plate, that fluids and fiber can change cravings, that eating too fast makes fullness hard to hear. And here's the trap: some people feel that relief and suddenly start undereating, skipping meals, a coffee, and a few bites, thinking this is working. Then they're tired, losing muscle, hair shedding, their mood is dropping. And I want to be really gentle here. If you ever had a complicated relationship with food, a history of restricting, that quiet can be a slippery place. Quieter hunger should make eating calmer, not make food disappear. Learning how to eat when you're not hungry and learning how to drink when you're not thirsty, because when you do have those signals, that means you're way behind. Because hunger coming back isn't an automatic failure. Sometimes it just tells you skipped too much, or your protein was low, or you're dehydrated, or you trained too hard and you didn't fuel up afterwards, or even if you slept badly. Hunger isn't a failure, it's just information. The goal was never to silence your body forever, it's to understand it. That's also why the dose is just one lever. Yes, these are increased gradually for a reason, but you don't have to keep climbing the dose every time a week is slow. If the only one you know is increase the dose, you're not learning your body, you're outsourcing it. Because as you go up higher, as I just mentioned, it just cuts the food noise so much that there could be chances where you have more calorie deficits or strength loss, muscle loss without realizing it. And to not let the scale run the whole story. One thing to know, that the weight does not tell you muscle, fat, water. You can lose fat tissue, you could build muscle. What you want to really pay attention to is, hey, is your clothes fitting better? Is your energy up? Are your cravings quieter? Is your waist shrinking? Those are positive wins for fat loss. And if you lose weight but lose a lot of muscle, that's not a victory. Muscle protects your metabolism, your joints, your future. The goal isn't just lighter, it's healthier. Do I have to be on this forever? Honest answer: if you have uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, maybe you have to be on it for blood sugar control. But from my experience and for all my patients that have been on the medication, they understand that it is all about the habits that promote the weight loss. And I've had many of them wean off it or stay on really low doses because they continue to work on those habits. One thing to understand is that obesity is a chronic disease and long term medication may be appropriate, but at the same time, creating that lifestyle change behind the medication is the most important thing. And we should not shame anyone for needing blood pressure or diabetes medication. And this is no different because you're going to hear a lot of people say, hey, this is the easy way out. No, you have to actually have to work really hard while you're on the medication to prevent any side effects. You have to keep up with nutrition. You have to keep up with your liquids. Otherwise, you're going to have plenty of side effects from undereating and not drinking enough. But here's what I've actually seen, because this is what matters. I've had many patients wean off these medications, some stepping down to a lower dose, some stopping completely, and they keep losing weight or they maintain their weight. What they had in common wasn't willpower, it was how they use that quiet noise, that lack of food noise, to build habits that made them feel good on their own. And this connects straight back to what we said about dopamine in the last episode. They didn't just remove the food noise and leave a void, they gave their brain new loops to lean on, movement that they actually enjoyed, strength training, walks, sleep, connection. The slower, longer lasting kind of dopamine instead of that fast, hollow kind. So when the dose came down, those new patterns were already doing the work the medication used to do. The medication created that space, their habits filled it. That's why I don't want anyone thinking they're helpless without it. Use the time it gives you to build those patterns. So if the day comes that you step down or stop for any reason, you're left with the rhythm and self trust, not fear. And if you're not on these at all, by choice or because you can't get them, this still matters because your body makes GLP-1 on its own. Protein and fiber stimulates those fullness signals. Whole foods give your gut more to work with. Eating slower lets your brain hear the message. Strength training, sleep, hydration all help the systems behave. Will it feel as strong as medication for everyone? No, but it tells you the same truth. Your hunger isn't random, it's communication. And the more you understand it, the less shame you carry. That's the real lesson of GLP-1, not just weight loss. When your body gets the right signals, the mind quiets around food, the cravings soften, the urgency fades, and you finally get room to choose. And once you have room to choose, you're not fighting food anymore. One thing that is also important to understand is why are we sometimes wired and feeling burnt out at the same time? One of those important hormones that can play a role is adrenaline or norepinephrine, our flight or fight system that never shuts off, and why so many people run hot but still have no energy. So, why am I always tired, maybe sometimes wired, and still not feeling restored? So, we'll slow that down in the next episode. I'll see you there.